All right. Welcome to another great podcast. We have on a fantastic guest today, the great Erik Richards. Give a little background. I'll let him give his background too, but I just want to give a little intro. I got to know Erik back when he was running the Army All-American game. He was responsible for picking the talent there. They had just started up FBU at the time. And I think we're talking maybe 2008, I think. In that
Man,
time.
Dave, you're good.
Yeah, I
You're
think
good.
so. Right? Am I right?
It was actually January of 2009.
2009. Okay. So we were having those conversations. And I think it was in the summer I started coming in there and talking with you guys. Since then, Erik has taken over with Steve Quinn and run FBU and grown it to it's a national presence from a camp standpoint. They also run the FBU team tournament, which is a national tournament where the teams come from around the country. It's kind of become one of the big staple national tournaments for youth sports. They run their own all-star games as well. I won't get all the sponsors right because I know sometimes, but I'll let you
Ever changing.
Yes, an ever-changing thing. So I'll let you state what the sponsor is that's in charge of those games. But the all-star games he runs, he's seen. One of the things that has been great about Erik. He originally ran and correct me if I'm wrong, ran a youth league for many, many years in Georgia. One of the, I would say is at the time was one of the most responsible leagues for launching Georgia, which became one of the, now is known as one of the big four in college recruiting state-wise. But that Gwinnett County area league and the teams that were in those areas there, surrounding counties as well, that was the launching pad for a lot of players that ended up becoming really, really big-time players. And it really was, if you look at recruiting, the amount of players that come from Gwinnett and the surrounding counties, it's unbelievable how many Division I players come from there. I'm not even talking about the lower levels, but, because that's probably endless number of guys. But at Division I level, how many players come from there? And Erik ran that league for many years down there, started the league. And so he's responsible at the youth level, the high school level. He's really worked with so many big-time players. It's endless to name. And really has not just evaluated them, but gotten to know them personally as well, and coached a lot of these guys. So without further ado, I want to welcome FBU's Erik Richards. Thanks for coming on, Erik.
Hey, that's a heck of an introduction there, and your football history, Derek. He seems to amaze me at knowing that much about a little Southern Youth Football League and high school region. That it was kind of crazy. I'll back up a little bit,
sure,
Dave, and tell you a little bit how I became involved. I think when I was a Gwinnett native, I wasn't smart enough to go to college out of high school, so I went to the Marine Corps first, and then as I came out of the Marine Corps, went to college and back home in North Georgia, and I kind of I wasn't a great high school football player. If I was, I wouldn't have had to go to the Marines first. But at 5'9", 150 pounds, and a 4.8.5 40, the colleges weren't knocking on the door. And so went off to the Marines first. And when I came back, I played for such a great coach, Coach Kevin Maloof, who was at Duluth at that time and then went over to Decula and had a long career. His brother is still at Norcross, Keith Maloof. But anyway, they just gave me the love for football. And so I wanted to do something, give back. And I just started volunteering coaching, assistant coaching in the Gwinnett Football League. And I found out real quick, I was like, because I was stationed out in California and I would help out with some teams out there. But I got back to Gwinnett, Derek, and 6-year-old head coaching staffs had headphones on. And they had watched film on us the week before. And I was like, man, it's pretty competitive.
Yeah.
And so at that time, it was early 90s. Gwinnett County was just getting ready to go through a boom. The county was less than 80,000 people in the total county there. In a decade, they went to 1.2 million. So I'd like to say it was all homegrown talent, Dave, but it wasn't. It was a lot of move-ins and everything.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden this league and kind of, coaching staffs in one league would know that if they're not scouting the team they're playing Saturday and 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old football, they were scouting you, and they had these massive tape collection and knew what you run and everything else. And so it became a good competitive football league. They were one of the very first leagues that went unlimited weight restrictions in the whole Southeast. Up until that time, Pop Warner kind of dominated the Southeast and a weight age scale. Gwinnett County, for some reason, a couple years before me, decided, hey, let's develop these linemen and, this and that. And so there was an unlimited weight, and I think they got out in front of just about everybody.
Definitely.
And so one thing led to another, and was an assistant coach. And 2 to 3 years later, my kid was born. So I started head coaching, and then they said, hey, we need you to go over and represent our association over at the league meeting on a Wednesday night. And the previous president in front of me ruled with an iron fist. And I was kind of walked into the room, and there was all kind of fines and everything. And Dave, you can relate to this. You've probably heard stories about how well run Gwinnett County is. I mean, like it was an iron fist. They weren't going to put up with any parents, coming on the fields or this or that. And so every Wednesday night during the season, they would meet. And I said, man, this is really where I would like to gravitate to, is kind of learning the runnings of this league and everything like that. And so I would say in the mid-90s, ended up on the executive board for Gwinnett Football League. And a year into it, I just wanted to learn slowly. A year into it, the president had some health problems and said, man, I can't finish out the year. You got to take over. And I was a president at 27, 28 years old of this youth league that had 10,000 football players and cheerleaders in it. Now, I remind you, Dave, this was before emails.
Right.
And before cell phones in the mid-90s. And
there's a lot of face-to-face interaction, even more so than you sure as hell wanted.
our home phone rang. Our home phone rang from the time I got home from work till 11:30 or 12 at night, right?
Wow.
You were getting the coach's side of the story. You were getting the parents, player side of the story.
Yep.
You were going back to the coach and saying, well, he said he didn't get his 8 minimum plays. And so I think I was the happiest when email came along of anybody in the country. And so anyway, rock
and
along
I can relate
there.
because I grew up. I can relate, Coach, because my father and mother ran our youth organization where I grew up in North Jersey, and believe me, it sure as hell wasn't on that scale. But he was the president of the entire league, of the entire, our town league, and mom ran the cheering aspect of it. So, I'm growing up and I'm seeing these people in the house, they're having meetings about this and who's in, we're going to go to this league. So, I mean, not on the scale of that, but I can relate to that phone ringing a lot as a kid.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And then, then after, with email, you can answer. And when you're done answering, and stuff. And so that was a welcome sight. And then, the league did, just like Dave said, really how I landed in the job of the Army game, Dave, is Under Armour the first 2 years was kicking the Army's game's ass on getting all the Gwinnett talent, the Robert Condicis, those kids.
Yeah, he was like the original, yeah.
Yeah, and so somebody, the Army came to the old owners, Richard McGinnis, and said, hey, we're losing the battle in the Southeast. We got to have somebody that speaks that language. And they said, well, where are all these kids coming from? Where are the most of our kids coming from? And somebody said, well, this little county northeast of Atlanta is producing major Division I talent. Let's find out, who the guy is there. And I had all those kids when they were 6, 7, 8, 9. And Dave and Derek, y'all know the feeder programs in Gwinnett. If you're going to Grayson High School, you play for the Grayson Rams. If you're going to Parkview, you play for the Parkview Panthers, and so on and so on. And so, it was kind of in the right place at the right time that I knew a lot of those kids. I guess the Southern accent didn't hurt, being as, I could get over to South Carolina, get to Alabama, get to Florida, and as Dave knows, our roster is made up probably of almost about 40 to 50% are in those southern states of any All-American roster. So I had a head start there and kind of even things out against Billy Tucker and the guys on kind of getting some of the southern guys back over to our game, and continue to run the league and stay in Atlanta while I raised my kids and finished out at 27 years and kind of did the FBU thing. Steve and I, took over the FBU camp model in 2010 and kind of refined it. And I'm glad to, listen, NUC, us, that we're still here, right? I mean, there's been a lot come and go, and that's not throwing shade at anybody or anything like that. But I think when you do things and you do things right, like NUC, like us, like what Billy's done with underclassmen, you stay around for the long haul. And, so here it is. And kind of fast forward on the high school game. They had the Army as a partner for 18 years. The Army went away. NBC bought the game from Rich and Doug and kind of hired me to do the selections and run the game and run the committee. And gave Steve and I the FBU piece. We brought the FBU piece to Naples, and we're here, and they're real close to another title sponsor. They've had Adidas in the pocket for about 5 years while they looked for a title sponsor. Adidas didn't want to have the title sponsorship of the game. They kind of like being a presenting apparel sponsor of it, and so NBC's kind of taking their time, and there's a big announcement coming in the next month or two with the new title sponsor.
That's amazing.
Fantastic.
That's awesome.
That's fantastic. It is such a tough deal. And what you said is really true about the long haul and doing things the right way, because there's so many, I call it like, and they should be local players in the game, because they know the local kids and stuff like that. And there's different camps and stuff like that. But there's so many local players that come and go. And then I always tell this story, and Derek's heard it probably 1,000 times. I always say to people, and every time I hear someone wants to continue, like, expand nationally, or expand even regionally, I say, good luck. You go ahead and try it. I said, it's when you run a local camp and you as a coach or a guy run it, you want to put it in your pocket, $5-10 grand or something like that. And you run it maybe a couple of camps. I think you could do that really well locally. And there's a lot of guys that do. And you can do it really well. The second you decide to go from, let's say, New Jersey to Georgia and run a camp, or Virginia and run a camp, or Texas and run a camp, your expenses go through the roof. And one of the things people don't realize is that it's not just, equipment or sending it down there, but it's also getting the right people in place and all those kind of things. And being able to do that for a long time, it's an honor to be able to help the kids doing that, like you are. But it's hard. It's hard, and people don't realize that this business is not like you open in a KFC or a Chick-fil-A or McDonald's and set it up. It's a grind to be able to build that and to build the relationships from that standpoint. Talk about what some of the keys to your success, I think, in reaching kids and developing those relationships, so you guys can continue to run things nationally in a crazy environment, by the way, which we'll talk about a little bit, but a crazy recruiting environment, which has changed the camp landscape.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think the thing that gave us a leg up on competing against the, other all-star game is trying to get to learn these kids at a younger age. So we incorporated the middle school tournament, right? And it lets us see the James Cooks and the Trevor Lawrences and all these kids in the 7th and 8th grade, because they're all trying to make that particular team. And so we're able to build a relationship. I think, one of the things we kind of did right out of the chute at FBU, and it's just my model, and I've noticed you do it too. I don't really get into slinging mud at other entities or anything like that. We try to do what we do. We've had to evolve. Like I know, we were a 3-day camp at one time. Having parents drive Friday afternoon in Dallas, Atlanta, and LA over to a high school, half across town, and then work them out for 2 hours, and then say go home, be back here Saturday morning at 8 a.m. and then we're going to do it for 8 to 10 more hours, and then go home and then come back on Sunday. And as you know, when 7-on-7 kind of evolved, Dave, and those kids, were doing 7-on-7 and other sports and this and that, the model of a 3-day didn't work. So we cut out the Friday night. We went to 2 days, and we stayed at 2 days for the better part of 5 or 6 years. And then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, it was harder to get in the schools, to get the classrooms and everything like that. And 7-on-7 by that point had quadrupled in size. So now what we were getting is kids saying, well, I could do Saturday, but I can't do Sunday. So why would I pay for the whole camp? Or I can do Sunday and I can do Saturday. So then we kind of pivoted and rolled to a 1-day model where we were Ring Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. We were in Birmingham, Alabama on a Saturday. We'd pack up at 4 or 5 o'clock, pack the truck up, get over to somewhere in Metro Atlanta, get about 3 hours sleep, and then set up the next high school on Sunday. And we've rocked and rolled with that model right now. Is it hard? Yeah. I mean, it's, a truck driver and an ops crew and a registration person asking them to do a camp on a Saturday and be there at 6 a.m. and then pack up and get on the road and do the same thing again on Sunday. It's taxing, but that's where the market's gone, right? Yeah. So we had to evolve with the market. We kind of take pride on it that we did change and evolve with the market, and you have to do it. I mean, a whole new can of worms is these colleges had to evolve to NIL, right? The ones that didn't do it, the Stanfords and the Clemsons, got behind the ball to start with. Everything. So that's really where FBU is at now, and it's we're just trying. Look, we're a camp and a camp model that is trying to help that kid that's fighting for a starting position on his varsity. He might even be a backup, and he's battling this junior or senior to get some playing time, or that junior or senior that is wants to continue playing football after high school, Derek. He don't have the FCS offers, the Group 5 offers, anything else, but he wants to keep on playing at a Division I AA, Division II, Division III. Yeah,
no doubt about it. It's amazing how, when you first started in camp space, and I remember that, like, you think, oh, it's camps, like I've run it this way, and you're not thinking you have to continue to evolve, but then you realize, wow, the market changes. You got to keep evolving. And it's no different than any other type of business. Like competitors come in, all these different things happen. Some of the big COVID was a killer, obviously, for camps. So everyone had to pivot, because you're like, wait a minute, we can't go run a camp now for 8 months. What are we supposed to do? And then the other thing, the changing landscape of college camps, I think was a big deal. Originally, the satellite camps changed it tremendously, but now every college running a camp on their campus
2 or 3 times a year, because they're wanting to keep those kids busy, and it's a way to pay them. It's a way to pay them at the Georgia States, at the, even the smaller colleges have their own camp now. And so you're constantly competing on that. Now we're like, you try to set your schedule up. You can't miss everything, because if you do go in between, 2 or 3 college camps, you go, hey man, we got a good weekend here. There's nothing going on in Alabama at Samford or UAB or anything like that. Then all of a sudden, the largest 7-on-7 tournaments that weekend. The state track.
Here we go. Right? Yeah.
And so what we've learned is, like, look, you're not going to control those things. Go out and do what you do, and do it the best you can do, and train as many kids that want your product as possible. Right.
There's no doubt about it. Many years ago, I don't remember the camp program that it was, but there was some camp program that was competing nationally. They're no longer around. I can't remember the name of it, but a guy sends me a message, or a parent send me a message, and they're like, "Hey, how do you guys compare to this thing?" I didn't know what it was. Like, obviously I knew you guys especially because we were, the home offices were very like literally close to each other, but we had done business together. So I knew you guys, but like, I didn't know just like, you don't know everything that's out there. Right. So the guy goes, "How can you not know this? This is one of your competitors." I said, "Listen, I focus on what we do and try to get better at what we do. I can't know everything that's out there. So if you think this is a better camp, you should go to it. I don't know anything about it. You know what I mean? I can't tell you how we compare to it. I can tell you what we do. And if you like that, great, come to it. If it's not for you, go to the other camp. Like, you should do I always tell people, you should do what's best for you. That's the most important thing, because it's your kid. It's not my kid. I don't know what you need to do for your own child. You have to figure out what you need to do for your own child. If you ask me a question about what we do, I can tell you that, but I can't tell you what you should do with your child." That's one of the things that I've always I'll advise you the best you can on what we can offer, but I can't tell you what to do with your child, because you have to figure out what's best for you. Then if you have specific questions about recruiting or about things that go into, I could obviously answer those questions, but
Right.
you have to figure out what you would like your child to accomplish or do. And then if we're the right fit, I could tell you what it is. Just like, with your guys' camps, you could say, "Hey, this is what we do. And if you think this is great for you, awesome, come and do it."
Yeah, we're a little bit the same. I mean, we preach to our, camp base, our database, when we have them on spot, like, have a map, have a calendar. Don't just
Yep.
shoot from the hip. You ought to be sitting down in December with your athlete, and you ought to say, "Hey, in March, we're going to do FBU Jersey. In April, we're going to do an NUC. In May, we're going to do a UC report camp,
Right.
because we got invited and stuff." And like, but if you don't have a map, and what you're going to find yourself doing, and I see this all the time, Dave, is you're going to find yourself out there every weekend chasing, running a 40 every weekend, or doing a 7-on-7 tournament every weekend. And there's not. The other thing I preach is you shouldn't be on a 7-on-7 team that's playing in more than one tournament a month. I mean, if you're doing three 7-on-7 travel tournaments a month, your grades are gonna slip. There's just no way around being gone from Friday night till wee hours in Monday morning, getting back from a Vegas or whatever. And if you're out there doing that every weekend because your 7-on-7 team wants to be in every tournament and win every trophy for every entity out there, you can't keep up and stuff. And so the big thing we preach in our seminar is, like, make a calendar. You really shouldn't be doing more than one a month of a showcase, combine camp, or anything like that. And then stick to that. And those other 3 weeks, be at home training, be at home studying, be at home doing this. That's our message. And the ones that have followed that, we've kind of seen it work.
I'll give you an interesting. So we run our own 7-on-7 club where we live, and we have kids from 8 to 18 in the club. And one of the things that we have done that I think is unique, and Derek, Derek's part of it too, that I think a lot of our parents have really loved. We have a couple of philosophies. Number one, we don't go to national tournaments. We play regionally in our area. So I think we'll go to, we're in the shore area of New Jersey. We'll go to Delaware. We'll go to the Philadelphia PA area. We'll go in New Jersey we'll go to the New York City area. We'll go up to like New Rochelle. But that's primarily what we'll do. And if we get an elite team at the 18 level, maybe we'll send them to one event that's a big event like that. And what we found is it allows them, and we said, listen, if you got to go to a showcase camp or you got to go to something with your team, or you have to run the track meet on Saturday.
Other sports, right? Multi-sport
your own
guys.
sports. That's your priority. And Derek will tell you, because we know all these guys and stuff, that we're one of the only organizations that do that. So we have, like, you can't believe the number of the superstars that we have on our team. But most tournaments, and Derek will tell you this, most tournaments, you know, we'll only have like 10 or 12 kids because our other 30 kids are playing sports, going to a camp that they want to go to. We tell them, don't worry about it. You do what you need to do, and you just let us know what your schedule is and what tournaments you can come to, and you go and compete in those tournaments, right? Now, it's a little different with the younger kids because they don't have as much, you know, they're playing, but it's different thing. But when you talk about high school kids, I think what you said is really, really important. It's one of the reasons why we have that, and we've lost some top kids to other clubs because they want to go all over.
They want to go. Yep, we want to go.
That's okay. We say, hey, that's okay. You have to do what you need to do. Okay, this is what our philosophy is, because we don't want you to lose your high school sports experience. We don't want you to lose that you're on this baseball team. You might be a great baseball player. You might be a great track athlete. We don't want you to lose. You might just want to be on the team. Okay, we don't want you to lose that. Because I think one of the things that when with all the outside stuff that is available to kids, that we feel that kids losing the high school experience a lot more. And I
100%.
think that's still a important part,
huge part of the development,
life experience.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? No matter how great a player you are.
We got kids that leave to go play with their 7-on-7 team in a national tournament and miss their prom. I mean,
That's crazy.
I mean, come on.
That's crazy.
I mean,
and it
It's
kind
not
of
worth
sometimes,
it in the long run. It really isn't.
And when those guys, you know, and then when they approach us, right, and at tryouts, and hey, what are the big tournaments we're going to, and when do we set up the try? And we're like, look, this is how we do it, and
you'll like it. If you go with us, you'll like it.
And that, but a lot of just guys, hey, oh no, like this team's going here, coach, or we're going here, or we're doing this, and it's like, okay, like look, you go do what's right for you, right? But that's okay. But this is how we're gonna do it. And like I said, we, every weekend it's a Rolodex of who's gonna be there, who's not gonna be there, and then we just make it work, right? And it's the guys that stick with it and really, participate and do their thing, and then still get that extra experience in terms of staying with running track, playing lacrosse, doing all those other things, the school-based stuff. They kind of they look at us and they say, thanks, like I really didn't expect to be, I didn't need to do all that other stuff. Right. But if they want to, you're more than welcome to. But we've just seen the overall development of our kids by doing that and participating in those other sports, not just sports specific, but socially, and then they're with their grades following through on that. And parents, once they kind of really look at the big picture, take a step back and slow it down and stop chasing all that stuff that's going to happen in the future and live in that moment, we kind of get praised for it. And listen, it's really the rare model, but it's what we do and it's worked.
Right. 100%. Listen, 7-on-7, it's definitely helped the passing game. I mean, Dave, you remember the days you'd go to a middle school game and if they completed 3 passes in the game, it was something, right? The ball was hitting the ground, the clock stopped and everything else. And you're like, this game's going to take 3 hours to put. Now, these 10U and 6th grade games have a decent passing game, right? At the high school level, I mean, you can go to a high school game and see 40, 50 passes completed in a game, and stuff. And so it's definitely helped, but I think you got to keep it in check. Before the NIL money just got absolutely stupid at every college, you had these players that, and I'm not going to name the high level 7-on-7 teams. Some of those guys I'm good friends with, and I rely on for my players.
100%.
But they'd give the kid $500 and travel expenses and everything else, and then the kid would come play with them in a tournament, and they'd get bounced in the second round by a Tucson Turf who doesn't take outside kids or anything like that. and then the next weekend, the kid's on another team for $1,000, right? Because this team paid him $1,000 to come and stuff. So I think you really, as a parent, you got to step in. I think it's slowing down a little bit now with every school getting in the NIL and the money coming in the NIL, and that's a whole nother podcast, right? My feelings on that.
That's a 10-part series that we can hit on there.
Yeah, 10-part series, and we still won't.
Netflix
get anywhere.
special.
No, I think the key is to balance, and I'll go back and say it again. If somebody tuned in late, you have to you really have to make a schedule. Make a schedule in November or December. As soon as your season ends from your high school team or middle school team, you should be mapping out that schedule. Playing on a local 7-on-7 team where you go to practice and then you're back at home in 3 hours. That's a whole different animal. That's fine. It's going and having to travel and do this and your whole weekend's gone as a kid.
Right.
It's not good. It's not good for long term. It's not good for your high school experience.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. It's the whole thing is, and this because you work with so many high level kids. The kids that are going to be really, really high level kids, they're gonna be able to get there as long as they follow the right process. What happens is if they get pulled, let themselves get pulled in every direction, they end up losing what their core value is as a person and as an athlete, and then they end up like making very, very difficult decisions that may not be in their best interest. I think you nailed it. So you brought it up, so I'm going to let you expand a little bit on it. NIL is such a big part of, obviously, so for people to understand, this is the top tier kids that NIL is really a big part of. I mean, kids even at Division I level, they're guys getting money if they're not the top tier, but the real big money is going to the really, really top tier players. Have you seen that have an effect on what you're doing at all? I'm curious if that has become at all an issue, and I'm curious your thoughts on NIL as a whole too.
Yeah. Well, for sure. I mean, when I talked about you had to evolve, what was happening is with the with the colleges going to 4-team of playoffs. Now they want to get that athlete on campus in December so that they don't have to. They can quit recruiting him, right? Once they got him on, then they don't have to worry about him flipping on signing day. They don't have to invest a coach and everybody else to be at his house for the next 60 days and everything. And so the key is getting that kid on campus. The way they do it, these playoff teams and bowl teams, they'll say, hey, about midway through their junior year, why don't you take a few courses and graduate early and get to campus early? And then you can go through bowl practices with us and stuff. And so what was happening is these kids were, going with their bowl teams. They were getting bowl travel money and everything. And they were calling me at the All-American game. They said, hey, Erik, Georgia's playing in the Rose Bowl. I'm getting $3,500 travel money. I can't see coming to the All-American game. Then you had it times 4 because of semifinals. Now we go to 12, right? And so we were left the week of or week before scrambling for a 3-star or whatever to kind of fill into the game, and the game showed. The media wasn't interested. Generally speaking, 90% of our players are committed now, so you don't have the decoration and that juice. So what we did, and this will be the first year, is we said let's drop back and let's invite 25% of the roster of high level juniors. Right? Most of them are uncommitted. Most of them are still fighting for that 5th star, and that 5th star is a whole lot of zeros difference.
Oh yeah,
when they go to negotiate their NIL deal, there's only 32 of them in the country. So if they can come down and perform and get that 5th star by the major recruiting services, whether it's 24/7 Sports, On3, Rivals, whoever, right. Then when they go sit down, Jeremiah Smith, they can add a 0 on the end of that package, right? And
Amazing.
so now those juniors are a little bit hungry.
Hell yeah.
Particularly the ones that are 4 stars, of adding that 5th star, because it just takes them to a whole nother level. Now, shifting gears, what I think about NIL. The kids need to make some. It used to drive me crazy, Dave, that a kid couldn't take his bowl jersey and sell it on eBay.
Right.
Couldn't go down to the local mall and do an autograph show, right? You know, a couple times a year. Had to jump through hoops to work a football camp for us, get it done through compliance. It used to drive me crazy. And so I think, I was like, man, these kids need to be able to get something. Did I foresee it going to what it went to? No. But there's only the conferences and the NCAA are to blame. All they had to do was get out in front of this with some type of rules and regulations. I don't know what it is. Is it a salary scale, right? That you can't make you're here as a freshman, you're here as a sophomore at this position, you're here as a junior by position. We all know that quarterback, defensive end, now wide receiver are the so maybe it was a sliding scale because now they've run into a real trouble.
Oh yeah.
Kid's a freshman All-American or gets all freshman conference. He struck a deal for $20,000 a month. Now he's got his DMs being blown up. I can get you $50,000 a month. What's the kid gonna do? And you saw it with Downs. You saw it with the Oklahoma offensive lineman. They go into the coach. Unfortunately, the coach said, well, hell, that NIL, that money's spent already. I can't make money reappear in the coffers for you. And the kid uses it as leverage to go get more money somewhere else. I mean, it's bad news. And I don't know that they can reel it in because they've let Pandora's box out.
Yep.
And now they're all scared of lawsuits. Well, there's a precedent set here and there and everywhere. But, like I said, you had a couple schools fight it at first, Derek, with the Clemsons. Dabo was like, oh, we're not going to do that here. We're not going to do that here at Clemson.
We're not. We're taking a standing ground. Yeah,
they had a couple, 8-4 seasons, and they said, you know what, we better get with the program. Stanford, the same thing. Everybody asks what happened to Stanford. Well, Stanford, you can't just sell your education anymore. You got to give them that education degree from Stanford plus some competitive spending money, right? And everything. So it's a mess. To me, it's a mess. And I'm not trying to hate on kids and everything else. No. The one stat I saw that really blew my mind is that 68 college quarterbacks last year made more money than Brock Purdy.
I saw that this week. That was last week, maybe. It was like,
think about that.
That's insane.
Think about that. I mean, here's a guy that played for the Super Bowl and everything in the NFL at the highest level, and 68 D1 guys. Out of those 68, what is going to make the NFL? Maybe 10.
Right.
Right. So all those other guys made more money than Brock Purdy, and now they're not going to be able to. You're not going to be able to duplicate that in the work field. It's not realistic for a college quarterback at SMU that doesn't make the league to go make $750,000 his first job.
Not happening, buddy.
Now you got to pay for whatever car or ever is in the garage and the upkeep.
And how much are you set up in the future, right, Eric? Because like now, we talk about financial literacy and all that stuff, and how many documentaries, 30 for 30s on athletes going broke and all that other kind of thing. Like you look at where some of these kids come from. Now you're handing them all this money. I'm sure there's some type of, hey, this is how you handle it. But look, now all of a sudden those cousins start coming out of the woodwork, right? And now you're based with that NIL money 4 years of living a certain type of way. Now you don't go to the league, you don't go to that next level. Damn, even if you do and you're not one of those top tier guys, you might not make as much money as you did in college your first year in the NFL. And now it's, what do I do? How do I handle this? And then before you know it, like these guys are going bankrupt.
Yeah, it's it's crazy. And I just wish their NCAA wouldn't have turned a blind. This isn't going to happen. This isn't going to happen. It was going to happen.
They knew it was going to happen.
And all they had to do was have stuff in place.
Well, you remember when Northwestern, I don't know if this was around I want to say like 2012, 2013, Northwestern, the players all decided that they wanted to be employees of the university and they wanted to unionize.
Yeah.
And the NCAA, like it got ruled that wasn't allowed. The NCAA, instead of saying, let's figure out what these guys are actually talking about here, right? And figure out, is there a path to start to make this happen the right way? They basically just tried to, they just squashed the Northwestern guys instead of taking what they were actually talking about and saying, is there a solution here that works? Are these kids on the right? And the same thing happened with UCLA when they had O'Bannon thing.
O'Bannon, yep.
So they were, the players were crying out loud to say, hey, this is something that we want a solution for. They told them for many years. Those were, to me, signs that, hey, you need to come up with a solution, not to try and squash it, but to figure out what the right solution was. And you're right. They took a blind eye and they basically said, this ain't going to happen. We squashed the Northwestern thing. We dealt with that of court with that O'Bannon thing, right? This is not going to become a thing. And they could have began to take steps to solve whatever the solution was. They could have taken steps. They didn't do that. And I think that obviously what all it's done is, in the long run, and this part is going to be a good solution for it. Basically, the staffs in college at the highest level are going to mirror how NFL is with general managers, player personnel, and kind of a division of labor with respect. Sure. And I think that part is going to be good, but then there's going to have to be parameters obviously associated with all that from a
you can't ask these staffs to have to recruit their current roster harder than they're recruiting recruits. And that's what, as I talked to Kirby and Brent Venables, they spend more energy recruiting their own roster than they do bringing in the a new recruit. So it's a mess, and the
timetable too. The timetable of everything, right? I mean, these guys are recruiting during bowl season, right? It almost inhibits and hurts the guys that make it to the playoffs because they're trying to figure all this out. I mean, holy hell!
I'm probably like Dave. I've had a couple offers to go to get a college job, and
I'm sure you
be
have
a recruiting coordinator and stuff like that. I don't want any part of it.
Hell no.
Now if the NFL calls me where I can clock out in December and clock back in August, I'm good to go. But I don't want any part
right?
of those hours those guys put in at the college level. It's insane. You don't have a family.
Right. No. I mean, look, Dave, your buddy at Boston College, right? Hafley, he left. Right? He went. Yep. He's like, hell no, NFL job, I'm gone. Let's go.
One of the beauties, I haven't been an agent. I was an NFL agent for 6 years. And one of the beauties of the NFL, I tell this to people all the time because they ask about, you deal with a lot of college guys, right? Like you do. And I always tell them that when I was an agent in the NFL, the beauty of the NFL structure was that I knew who I was dealing with for each thing, right? So I knew I had to deal with the area scout for this. I had to deal with player personnel. If I had a guy in the league and he had to, got cut from a team, I dealt with player personnel. For a guy getting drafted, I dealt with college scouting, right? I knew who to go to for these things. And they would tell you. That was the greatest thing, too. There wasn't guys overlapping on tasks. The only guys who sometimes overlapped is a coach. Like, let's say you were an offensive line coach and he was helping with college scouting. They wanted the offensive line guy to be involved so he knew who he might get that next year, right? Mm-hmm. But other than that, that division of labor was really good because I would call up the area scout and say, hey, my guy got cut. Who do I talk to in player personnel? And they would say, hey, you got to talk to so-and-so. This is the guy to call. So you would go call that guy and he would say, hey, yeah, we're interested in him, or no, we're not. Like, it was the solutions were very fast and furious, or they would say, hey, let me take a second look. But you got answers fast. You got no. I always say to people, in business, the greatest thing you could hear is a no, because you don't waste your time there, right?
Exactly.
So when someone would tell me a no, I would know, okay, listen, I'm not going to go and waste my time with if the Green Bay Packers said no to me, I'll go work the New York Jets now on this player and find out what they think about him. That was the beauty of the structure. What's tough about college is that they still make everybody do everything. Like, you might be the player personnel guy, but you're still helping with the schedule on the buses to go to this next game. They haven't figured out the division labor. You might be the running backs coach, and you're focused on coaching the running backs. But, oh, by the way, here's 20 guys I need you to look at tomorrow. Like, not one guy, but 20 guys I need you to take a look at and tell me if you like them. And so what has happened in college is that, yes, at the high level, the better guys are getting paid very well. There's no doubt they're compensated very well at the coordinator, position coach, head coach at Division I level. But those analysts, those they are not paid in that level, and they're doing multiple jobs. Even the position coaches are doing so many jobs. It's crazy. The way that it's structured. And what happens to the kids is, because of that, you get, and this is the thing that I think is hardest for parents. You might get a running back coach that says, yes, I like you. And then you might get someone in the same staff on the player personnel side that says, no, we have him down the board. And what happens is you don't have that coordination of communication all the time, because the structure has not caught up with all the information that is available. And that is a wild thing. And that's what's the beauty of the NFL. And you're right. Like, if you took a job in the scouting department of an NFL team, they would tell you exactly what you're responsible for. Oh, yeah. This is your job. This is where you're going. This is who you're evaluating. And this is the reports you got to give me back. They're not going to tell you, hey, Eric Richards, you're in charge of the states of Georgia, Alabama, and Florida for college scouting, and then tomorrow you're gonna fly out to the West Coast and start all of a sudden being responsible for those guys. That's the beauty, and that's the beauty of the salary cap. As a person, and you run a business, so I am on the capitalist side of things, and there are pros and cons to regulation, but this is one area where regulation is helpful, right? Some level of unionization is helpful, because you can't just screw over a player at the NFL without there being repercussions. There are actual rules in place nowadays, and we know, and you know stories of this too, but we know players that are getting money to live until they get to that university. People are giving them thousands of, not talking about what they're going to get when they get there, but they're getting thousands of dollars to be able to have expenses to live, because maybe they don't have that much money in their family, and they're beholden now to that university. Now, listen, the kid may need that money, okay, to live. His family may need that money to live. And now it's this structure where, like, you're paying somebody to come to your university. It may not be the best thing for them, but the kid has no choice. The kid has no choice in that. I need this money, and you know what? I'm going to go here because, and then they're thinking already in their head, after 1 year, it doesn't work out, I'm going to leave. Like, it's a terrible way of doing everything. And then you have states, right? So Texas currently, although that's going to go away at some point, currently doesn't let NIL in high school, right? But Florida and New Jersey do, and I don't know what Georgia does.
Right.
But Florida allows it. New Jersey allows it, right?
Florida, I think this is their first year, right?
Yeah, it's their first year. Georgia's had it 2 years thanks to Julian Lewis.
And look, and then you start getting into
Julian Lewis could get so much money, right? Could command so much money.
Right. But then you start getting, like, look, the longer these states kind of hold out, right, the lesser amount of, like, you're talking guys that would now move from state to state in order to kind of do some of that. You see a little bit of it now too, also now the whole taxes come into play, right? Like Florida, Texas. I mean, look, ain't nobody want to come to Jersey with the taxes we got up here, buddy. Like, hell no. Like, we're just trying to keep going.
They can't even figure that out, Derek, right now, because technically some of the collectives are 501Cs, and so that money can't be taxed. It's a mess, man. I'm telling you, it's a mess. And listen, I don't want to sound like I'm a hater on the kid. If I'd have been if I'd have been Julian Lewis and a school would have given me this much to give them a commitment and everything, and I could cruise around Atlanta in a nice $100,000 car and go to the jewelry store, I'm not saying I wouldn't have done it, but I just can't believe that three guys as ugly as us can sit here on a podcast and figure out just some basic, regulations that those guys in Indianapolis in the conference commissioners, are just. I think
that's what it's all driven by, right? Is like
those guys. They should have stood up. The Power 5, Power 4 now should have stood up and said, "Hey, it's coming. We need all this in place, and let's go talk to Dave Schuman and Erik Richards and whoever else that might have some ideas of how we can get a hold of this." And so I hate to sound like a hater on it and everything, because I'm not.
Should get the money. I don't like being that guy either.
But they've allowed their pride. These guys who are very, very successful, right? And very, very powerful universities. And I get it. Like you've been around a lot of successful guys, and you kind of there's an ego to it. And these guys, it's very hard for them to like understand what's going down on the ground level, right? And the kids should get that money, but you're right. They should have brought in consultants on it. And this is not something that McKinsey can solve, right? Like they would say, McKinsey is great for huge corporations, but this, that's who normally they would go and hire, like a McKinsey or a Bain or,
they don't know this space.
They don't know, but that's who they're going and hiring and asking them to try and solve this, right? And I'm not saying they hired actually McKinsey, but they're hiring companies like that, very high-powered consulting companies who do solve a lot of these gigantic corporation issues. This is a ground-level issue that's very hard to understand. It's an easy solution, I think, but it's hard to understand what's actually going on unless you're at a certain level of ground level. That's the thing that people have a hard – like, listen, you're in youth sports. I tell Derek this all the time. In youth sports, like, because my son's in it, like, youth sports is crazy.
Wild West, baby.
I didn't know, because I was obviously a high school coach. I ran the business, but I was a high school coach for many, many, many years, 20 years. I didn't really understand what was going on until my kid, like, what goes on here, what goes on there. Like, man, there were kids that I was shocked, like, at 9 years old, are traveling all over the country for like baseball, like literally traveling all over the country at 9 in the spring, and not actually probably the fall too, but all over the country. And I was like, wait a minute, they travel, like, how did they go to school? Like, they're 9 years old. Like, so they leave on Friday, miss school on Friday.
Right.
Go travel, play in these tournaments. And listen, they're great players. That's great. But like in the long run, you got all these. So these are the things that are going on ground floor that people don't realize. So the money, like the kids should get money. They should get rewarded for their success. I agree with you. Like, it's crazy that Brock Purdy, who's a superstar, is making less than guys who are just, some of them, fighting for jobs at a college level. They're freshmen. And the way that the whole entire structure of college sports goes now, the big thing that if I was a university president, this would be me. If I was a university president, obviously athletics pays the bills for a lot of things. I would demand, for my reputation of my university, okay, the reputation, because you don't want what's happening to UNLV, right? I would demand.
You don't want to be that front page person, right?
Who wants to be the president of UNLV where you're in the press for all this stuff that really is kind of controllable? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's real. It's all of a sudden your university is getting dragged through the mud for something that was
where if there had been a salary cap, there would have been no, you're making this UNLV quarterback, and that's what you're making, and that's what we have to deliver. There was no, we promised you 85,000.
Yeah.
Presidents can get fired over these things. That's the truth. So
because
if I was the president of the university, I would have said to other presidents, hey, man, we need to make sure our athletic directors are involved in a solution that gets this all done, because I am Alabama. The last thing I would ever want it out. Now, I'm sure Alabama has a very tight solution to most of these. Just like, I played at UConn, and and Derek knows this, I talk to all the time with our guys, and they really have a handle of what they can do with. And I think a lot of the bigger universities do, but you don't know what's happening on the athlete level. You don't know all the people that are talking to them. So it's not that maybe the university in some, like a big school, doesn't have their ducks in a row. What you can't control is what's going on at the athlete level, who's talking to him, who's pulling on his ear. So that's why you want this. So you don't at some point accidentally get dragged into something. Florida had it happen with Jaden Rashada, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to get dragged into something that all of a sudden you're spending all your time and effort trying to clean up, which is such an easy thing. Like if I were to universities right now, if I was a big school, I would say, hey, we have $30 million to spend at University of Alabama. We will, until the NCAA comes up with something, or we are going to install a structure that allows us to spend whatever we need to spend, and not just have the contracts, but to make sure we have a salary cap that goes all the way through, and we put it through with our state for a level that they can go and have a solution from that standpoint. And if they do that, I think that not Alabama per se, but any university starts to do that, I think the other athletic directors will say, okay, because there is a limited amount of money. Like nobody, maybe one day they'll spend it. It keeps inflating. But if a kid wanted, let's say $100 million, nobody's paying that. Nobody's paying $100 million for the best quarterback in the country. So there is some limit to what you will be willing to spend. So you can actually start to instill that. And then the NCAA is going to have to make a solution, because what will happen is Coastal Carolina will say, hey, so-and-so has a cap of $30 million. We have a cap of $1 million. Okay. This isn't fair. We got to go play them. And that's not fair to us in the long run, versus nobody knowing exactly what the cap was. And I'll leave it like this, and I want to get your thoughts. A big time school in the Big Ten, one of their recruiting coordinators said to me, he goes, we have X to spend. We know that this university in the Big Ten has $20 million to spend. So we already know we have to get the best out of our players with this dollar amount. Meanwhile, this group has this dollar amount to spend. Mm-hmm. Okay. And it's not even anymore of, hey, who's coaching great and who's like, literally it's who's got the best players. And there's 3 teams in the country that don't play any of those games. And I think it's very interesting as like I call it a sci-fi experiment. Army, Navy, and Air Force, who know their players are going to be there for 4 years, and they've chosen to come there for a very, very different reason from everybody else. Army and Navy are undefeated at the level that they're playing at, and quite possibly could both be in the playoff. Okay, but most likely at least one of them, if they keep winning, will be in the playoff. With guys that are probably 4th-year seniors, mostly, right, 22 years old, who were not, who were 2-star, whatever. I guess there's no more 2 stars anymore. 3 stars, all right, because they got rid of 2 stars because people didn't like to get 2 stars. Wow. So you know that, right? Did you know that?
I know, but I would have been happy to be a 2-star.
I'm happy to have a half a star.
I never did understand that. I didn't understand why we still couldn't have 2 stars.
I found that out when I was working with Mike Farrell on some things. He explained the whole thing to me, and but basically, guys didn't want to have a 2-star, but guys didn't want a 2-star anymore.
Yeah, they're like, don't even rank me if you're going to put 2 stars on me. So we'll crowd you into the 5,000 3 stars they are.
Oh, it's so funny. But I think the Army and Navy thing is really a really interesting dynamic that is happening.
They could play back-to-back weeks.
I hope one of them get in.
So do I. How exciting will that be with Army and Navy, either one of them, with players who are going to go to the military after they have graduated. 99% of them, maybe one of them goes to the pros, but 99% of them, right, are going to go into the military after they graduate, who have gone there for specific reasons, playing against kids that literally could be getting $1 million a year plus, and on the same stage and competing with them, which I always think is such, people always say, "Oh, what's
It's hard to practice that offense."
the basketball one and done thing." Remember when Kentucky was so good and with the one and done, and then you started to get the Gonzagas, who had guys for 4 years who were as good as those teams. So I wonder down the line if you get like that dynamic where Army and Navy could always be really good because they're playing with 22-year-olds or 23-year-olds, and everybody else is playing with 19-year-olds and 20-year-olds. And just it's not that in the long run, those 19, 20-year-olds, they are going to probably be better in the long run as far as NFL and all, but in the short run, the 22 and 23-year-old is going to be a man versus a 19, 20-year-old.
Hey, BYU's undefeated, and they're playing with kids that go away for 2 years.
Yeah.
I always thought that was one of the great things about BYU too, right? Even back, remember the 80s, the old, in the 90s, the Detmers and the Bellinis of the world. They would do that with, it's the same kind of model. They had 24, 25-year-olds that are just stronger and physically bigger. But Erik, I want to let you have, your last thoughts on some things and going on the landscape and plug FBU a little bit, and then before we let you go.
No, I appreciate you guys. Appreciate what you've done for the long term of football. You and Derek. We do know the one thing is all those problems we said in the space and in NIL. We do know that this sport develops winners in sales, in boardrooms, in leaders. They make the best teachers, right? So it's such a great sport. It's why I've stayed involved all these years, Dave. I know it's why you're involved. If you hear passion in our voices, it's because we know what this sport does far longer after you put the football down, of making you a father, a husband, a pillar in the community and everything. And that's the real reason I do it. And I just see the winners it puts out. And generally speaking, if there's a stack of 10 resumes on your desk and you go through it, and 9 of them have not played even high school football. Let's take college out of the played high school football, and only one in there played high school football. That guy's going to have a leg up in the whole interview process.
He's definitely getting read before
he's been to war. He's done what it's done. He went to school. Then he went out for 3 years and ran together like 2 billy goats for 3 hours a day for 4 years and took getting yelled at by coaches and everything. Oh, yeah. And he's going to have the makeup and the dynamics to go out and perform for you in the workforce. So that's why I love the sport. I know it's why you guys do it long term is the people it produces. My kids only played up till 8th grade because we were in Gwinnett County and they were at a school that had Cam Hayward and Kevin Bower and Bradley Roby and all these stars. And they realized real quick that they were going to be real deep on the bench. So they switched over to lacrosse. But the tools that youth football gave them, it lasted them a lifetime. One's a pilot instructor in the Air Force. The other one's in charge of his a sales department at Amazon Web Services.
Leadership roles.
So it does, man. I mean, this sport, we're lucky to be a part of it, and I think some of the female sports are developing that, like basketball for females. I mean, we're going to start seeing some winners come out of it. A lot because, not just what Caitlin Clark has done, but some people before her, Maya Moore. I know you like that name, Dave.
Yes, she was great.
And all these stuff. And so I think you're going to start seeing winners in the female landscape that have this in their background.
There's no doubt about it. And sports, I agree. Sports in general is incredibly great for the athlete. Team sports teach you a ton of things. And football in particular, one of the things I always said, football, man, you might be the guy knocking someone down, but eventually someone's going to knock you down.
Yeah,
you got to get up. You got to get up and realize, woof, okay, I got to get back in there and I got to do it again. And I think that's what, football really teaches you those kind of things, because especially as a young person, and you notice in youth football, I haven't been in so long, man, that's a hard thing for the young kids to, when they get knocked down and they go, oh, their first instinct is, I don't know if I want to do this, right? And then they go back and do it. And then they realize, you know what, I can do it. And that light bulb, I've seen it with my own kid, that light bulb going on for a kid and realizing that was painful and I can go and I can fight through it. And, it's not as painful. And now I learn from it. Now I'm helping my friends and my teammates. It's just amazing. It's honestly, it's an honor to have you on to talk to. When what Derek said, I said, Eric Richards? You have Eric Richards? Oh, I said,
Derek slid in my DMs.
That's it.
Coach, I get it done anyway. Whatever gets it done, brother. Listen,
when
whatever
Derek
gets
was
it
young,
done.
he would have slid in the DMs of a real pretty girl, but now he's older.
Hell no.
He's sliding in DMs of grown men.
Come on, man. Like, listen. And Eric, I've known of you for a long time because, Mike and I have been tight for, so with Sony and
Yeah.
He was a great dude and a big advocate of yours. And I believe one of your original OGs.
He was, and we developed a friendship. I probably, between him and Trevor, I had a relationship with those guys all the way through, and then all the way to the weddings and everything else.
I was on an unofficial with Sony to Florida. That's how we've known. So he's always been an advocate of you, and look, I love what you do for the sport and continue to do it with the game and all the other kind of stuff. So I really appreciate you taking the time. I really do. Thanks a lot.
No problem, man. Let's get together again and do another one, and we'll dive into a different topic.
Absolutely.
You tell us the topic you want to cover. We'll bring it back on and talk about it.
There you go. Good to see y'all, Dave.
All right, guys. All right, Eric. I'll see you later, man. Have a great day.
Thanks, Coach.
That was phenomenal. Great job. Great job.
Good stuff, man. That's
another great one.
A GOAT, an original. I mean, look, you're talking about a game on freaking NBC, dude. And I love that he talked about kind of how it went, it was here, then it kind of went down. We're not having anybody committing, and you got to make some changes. And, I'm excited that this new sponsor coming out, this could be, obviously, they're making a big announcement, and we know how sponsorship drives certain things. Because look, Under Armour slapped their name on their game, and that's where a lot of those guys, some of these top end guys that used to be in this game used to go to that game. But just the overall stuff about the development and the youth level and all that other kind of stuff, just a lot of knowledge, proven knowledge too, right, Dave? Sustained knowledge where it's come from a place, and, talking about models of camps and all that stuff, just how you and him have evolved and continued to move along, right? You're in the same space, but there's a common ground of, hey, if we work together and do certain things, or, it's all about focusing on you and not everything else, right? Because guys going back and forth with, we don't do it like this, that, back and forth. Dude, everybody just focus on your model, and then you can continue to do it for a long, long time. And there's not many guys in this space that have been able to do that.
There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Fantastic project. He's a great guy.
Love that he's in Naples, bro. I'm pumped.
Tons of knowledge, in this space. So, all right. Well, until next time, we'll get. Wait, when is next time?
Next week.
Oh, next week. Okay, cool. All right, perfect.